Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, April 29th, 2021. And our top story today, the standard K through 12 curriculum. What's missing? Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Dr. Ronald Cantor. He's a learning consultant. Ron, so great to see you. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us again this morning.
It's great to be back. I'm really happy to be back.
Yeah, and I got to say, I'm ready to be instructed, and I know, or educated, I guess, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about curriculum, K through 12 curriculum. I guess my first question is, what is curriculum, and how does it get set at the local level, at the school district level?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and it's not all that different from when the expression that's used to describe how they make bills in Congress. You know, it's sort of like making sausage. Ugly, but the result is supposed to be tasty. The problem is right now it's not so tasty what's being produced as a result of the extant curriculum. I mean, start with the notion of what does the word curriculum mean? Where does it come from? Well, its origin is Latin, and basically it's the ruts in the road that carts would travel in over time. In other words, the more as carts would run on a road, there'd be these ruts that would form, and those ruts were basically a word that became curriculum. What is curriculum? It's a course of study. In a college, it could be an engineering curriculum. In a school, it's the entire curriculum of all the subjects that they cover. And I would argue that what's happened is a lot of what's in the curriculum, in other words, what they're studying, is irrelevant and doesn't have a real value or consequence in the world at large. Now, it's interesting to note that in order to make sense of this, you have to ask yourself, what is it that the students are supposed to be learning from this curriculum? So I prepared to talk a little bit about that, but I think generally speaking, in answer to your question, every state has its own board that sort of determines what's in and what's out. And there's a lot of variance across different states. Now, there was a time when there was a discussion of having a national standardized testing approach. That was called Leave No Child Behind. And actually what happened is the country left that bill behind because states didn't like being told what to do, right? So they said, okay, fine, we're not doing it. So, you know, the uniformity around the curriculum really is, shall we say, informed by professional organizations that specialize in those particular content areas. The problem is, how conversant are they with technology, with the movement of how things have changed? I think I'd like to share a little bit with you, if it's okay, about that notion of what's in the curriculum and how it really needs to be upgraded based on what's happened in our society. Is that okay to go there?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I guess, yeah, happy to hear that. And you know, I just want to preface what you're about to say is, you know, when I was growing up, and this isn't a, you know, in my day, you know, that Saturday Night Live character, but it was reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those were the basic things, right? You had to get those down in order to be really productive. And I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews who go to school, and I'm not sure the curriculum that they're being taught. But why don't you go ahead and start? But I do.
Well, it's probably. I bet your brothers and sisters whose children they are, they're more aware because as a result of the pandemic, they've been watching the curriculum play out in front of their eyes at home, and so what's happening is it's like parents are asking the question, do they really need this? But do they really need all of this particular content? But start out from the point of view of, from a learning perspective, what it is we expect to learn. And one thing is knowledge. You could also call it information. And a lot of it is just pure memory. Kids are expected to memorize this stuff as information. Then you have skills. Skills are the ability to do things. Now, the truth of the matter is there's some small amount of that, being taught in various subjects, but by and large, mostly it's tilted towards information. And then the last thing would be capability, the ability to actually solve a real world problem and have a capability for dealing with something authentic. To make this clear to the audience, let's think about changing a bicycle tire. You can know the steps you need to follow to change the tire of a bicycle. You can even practice changing a tire on a bicycle in a controlled environment, like a studio or something like that. But if you're on driving a bicycle and it's a rainstorm and the tire goes flat, and the ability to change it in those conditions, that's capability. And that's real value that, in my opinion, largely hasn't been addressed by the curriculum. Even so far back as 100 years, John Dewey was trying to move things to what he called project-based curriculum. And Jerome Bruner at Harvard talked about this notion of the spiral curriculum, where you come back to similar topics over time and you keep deepening the language. But all of this is trumped by the current situation, which is leading us towards the use of AI and augmented reality in education. I mean, is it so important now to really know how to spell complex words? Unless you're, of course, competing for a spelling bee championship, but we all use spell checkers. How about advanced mathematics, calculations? It's all available with tools that sit by our side. So what should they be learning? Should they be learning how to use these tools and apply them to real world circumstances? Or should they just be memorizing a bunch of stuff that Alfred Whitehead, who I'll talk about next, called inert knowledge? Knowledge that has no purpose. So why are they learning all this stuff? Oh, to pass standardized tests that may have no relevance whatever to their ability to do anything in the real world.
Yeah.
Strange.
Ron, if I could just jump in for a second.
Do.
I mean, what you're saying really resonates with me, because I always questioned why I was memorizing, for example, the Battle of Hastings was 1066 and what that actually meant to what I was going to be doing. And I learned that in high school, by the way. But you know what that actually meant for me from a practical point of view. And I'm a really practical kind of guy, right? I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to touch things. And before you go further, let me ask you, I mean, should the curriculum of the future be more practically focused to those skills that you're laying out?
Jeff, you're absolutely right. Right on target. Because like I brought with me, just a quick to show, I mean, I know you all can't read this, but this is Bloom's digital taxonomy. Now, Bloom is a famous learning scientist for many years at Harvard, and he came up with an approach to teaching at different levels of capability. So the notion of remembering is a lower level than, say, creating something. You need more skills, more competence to create something than just to remember something. The problem is when he developed his framework, we didn't have an internet. We didn't have digital tools. Kids didn't have more technology in their bedroom than they have in their classroom. And so a group of 10 years ago, a group of educators gathered together and they created a digital version of Bloom's taxonomy. And what's interesting is all of the levels of Bloom's taxonomy that before existed, they have adapted to the use of different software tools. So is it in the curriculum, for example, that kids learn for creation Prezi or PowerPoint or how to video edit? Do they learn how to curate content on the internet? Do they learn how to understand things by using different types of research tools on the internet? And the answer is some do, but I would predict that mostly you would find the concentration in more affluent schools, more affluent communities. You can be sure that kind of work is going on in private schools. And here's something that we all have seen. And I spoke about this in my last appearance with you. Basically, the skills that the students need to succeed now in this COVID-based transformed educational approach using virtual are skills that are not measured in the standardized tests. The ability to work independently, the ability to do the kind of more advanced digital work that's required to succeed in this kind of environment. None of that's measured. Those attributes are not even part of the, in quotes, curriculum, but they will be, because those attributes are going to be what separates us from the ability to be replaced by AI and robots. I mean, more human qualities are actually what we have to offer. And the problem is, if you look at the curriculum, there's almost nothing in there on that. The other thing there's almost nothing in these days is civil education. I mean, people ask why things have gotten the way they've gone in this country, if you will. And part of the reason is how much civil education is going on. Do they really understand the different branches of government? I would argue very little of that is going on anymore. And we're really feeling the effects of what I would consider to be a less educated population than is necessary to have a functioning democracy even.
Yeah. Well, Ron, I want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about transforming the K through 12 curriculum. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Ronald Cantor. Ron, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
My pleasure.
Ron, so, unfortunately, and this topic deserves hours upon hours of conversation. We just don't have that time. We set it up very nicely about what's missing, but let's talk about transformation. How do we get from point A to point Z, or 1 to 10, to kind of enact change, but positive change, so that we're setting up our youth for the future, to be successful in the future, and by the way, for America to be successful in the future?
Well, look, this is obviously a big challenge. I mean, a lot of what's gone on is, instead of having federal or statewide attempts to really transform education, they basically punted and say, okay, let's make charter schools widely available, and you do it. The problem is there's so much variance right now in attempting to do new stuff, or even just replicate the old stuff, that there really is no way to say there's a consistent approach. Now, I have some confidence in the new Secretary of Education that there will be more movement in that direction. But ask yourself this: will there ever be snow days again? I don't think so, because why have a snow day when you can attend virtually? That's just one small example of something that's going to lead to transformation. The other is virtual collaboration between students. So, one of the problems that I've seen as a coach for the First Tech Challenge, which is the largest robotics competition for K-12 students, is that kids who go to public school are disadvantaged compared to privates and kids who are homeschooled. And why is that? because the kids can't get in and work on their robots on the weekend. There's so many different rules associated with what they're allowed or disallowed to do, whereas club-based, home-based, even private schools let their kids in many instances in a much more robust manner. So I think this virtual collaboration is a big deal, and it's going to lead to, I think, really interesting differences in the way we approach. Again, there's going to be a big difference between affluent and non-affluent. But overall, I would say that this is my prediction, it may be wrong, but this is what I think. We've fallen behind due to the pandemic. There is a big need for diagnosing students and helping them at the level they're at. The Chinese have already been doing this using AI, getting better quality information back to determine how to help individual students. And I think you can see that will become more widespread. In other words, the use of AI to do diagnostics and try to help students come up. The problem is also teachers need to be developed to use these new technologies and teach with them. And one of the problems we've had is teachers have been thrown into this under the pretense they could just do it automatically without having any instruction or any orientation towards how to get it right. So the other thing to consider is this. What makes schools special has been the ability to socialize, also to have access to things you wouldn't have at home, like science labs, like computer labs, like gyms. I think we can assume that the increase in immersive learning environments using virtual reality, using augmented reality to teach is going to increase. That stuff's going to have to be in the school. It's too expensive to expect everybody to have it at home. So schools become a place where you go to use technology to learn how to do things that you couldn't possibly learn at home. That has to be some way of breaking things down. And lastly, let's be honest, Jeff, that the primary reason why the previous administration wanted to push past the pandemic was because they recognized the economy couldn't grow if both parents weren't working. We live in a society where it takes two incomes really to live the good life. And that means school is the equivalent of childcare. And if we don't have school, two parents can't work. And that's just not the way things are supposed to be. I hear that there's going to be a speech tonight where there's going to be a big increase in parental leave. But the bottom line is, school really turns out to be an economic necessity for this country unless we do something. So part of transforming school is transforming the economic model, which requires two parents to work or doesn't have goosed up childcare to help people who want to both work.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say,
No,
you make
fine.
a lot of, I always say that outside of the healthcare workers and the emergency workers, the people who had the hardest time were parents, and having to step up, do work, keep the family together, make dinners and lunches and all that kind of stuff, and also teach, really difficult. Ron, let me ask you about financial literacy.
Please, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, back when I was going to school, we had some budgeting and we learned about kind of the economic impact of what you were doing. And this was, by the way, this was in elementary school. This was in middle school or junior high school. I don't know if that really exists today, but I got to tell you, talking to people and just seeing what's going on out there, there's a huge need for this.
Very huge need, and several large, entities, most notably Bank of America, partnered with Khan Academy, which is a virtual, video-based instructional institution, one of the best, to develop a whole series of online courses to teach financial literacy and acumen. I don't think there's any more important subject in a capitalist society. People need to know how to make money, how choices that you make coming out of high school can really, really, really affect your ability to have a decent life and make a decent living. And, the problem is there's only so many hours in the day. And if you see children as a tabula rasa, which is a way of saying a blank slate in Latin, and you're just going to fill them up with a bunch of content, and then they're going to go off into the world full of content. It no longer makes a lot of sense anymore. Really, you want to teach students and, teenagers, particularly how to self-direct their learning, how to be lifelong learnings, how to attain the skills they need, how to figure out ways in which that they should not just earn the money, but spend and save wisely. And all that stuff seems to be a gap. Life skills. It's not just financial acumen, Jeff, it's life skills. In some societies where there's compulsory military service, a lot of those life skills are taught in the military. I learned a lot of them when I was a Boy Scout. And I just, in terms of my daughter, I mean, she's got to kind of figure it out herself. And she's one of millions who have to figure it out themselves. And frankly, there's got to be a better way. And I think some kind of universal public service, doesn't have to be military per se, would be a very good step forward in not just teaching life skills, but also teaching them the common purpose that we serve as American citizens.
Yeah. Well, certainly problem solving, I think, is certainly lacking. That's an area I completely agree. And, where to go to find the answers, how to find the answers, how to implement the answers. It's not just enough to get the answer, but how do you implement the answer? Ron, we're going to have to leave it there. We're not doing this topic
Jeff,
a lot of justice.
I was going to tell you how, when I was part of Vanderbilt's Cognition and Technology group, we focused on how to teach those problem-solving skills and critical thinking. Maybe next time.
I think this is a continuous series. I think this is to be continued in perpetuity, because these are decisions that school boards are making, local school districts are making, and it's affecting people. So we'll have to bring you back, Ron. Always a pleasure chatting with you, and we thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks very much. Always proud to be part of your operation and to do this. Really, really think you're doing some great work. So thank you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, and of course, our website. We're back again tomorrow, so until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.